hit that like button and subscribe.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're doing something a little unusual today, and honestly, I have been looking forward to this one all week.
Me too.
Usually, you know the drill. We take a massive stack of research papers, maybe a dense geopolitical analysis, or a technical breakdown of some new AI architecture.
Right.
And we try to break it down into something you can actually use. But
Today, we're looking at a story.
it is a definite departure from our standard operating procedure. I mean, when you first sent this over to me, I saw the title, The Geometry of a Perfect Apple Pie. And I admit, I hesitated.
You thought I was joking.
I thought, are we really doing a cooking show? You know, are we pivoting to food criticism? But then I actually sat down and I read it. And I realized pretty quickly that this is not really a story about cooking.
No, not at all. It's a battleground.
Exactly. It's a case study in conflicting ways of knowing. It's a narrative about what happens when you take two people who see the universe in fundamentally different ways.
Right. And you force them to collaborate on a task that requires both art and science.
The premise is just so good. We have two characters. On one side, we have Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Dave is a pragmatist. He's the guy who just wants to get things done. He trusts his gut. He believes in close enough.
Good enough for government work, as they say.
Totally. And on the other side, we have Pi.
Pi, our mathematical perfectionist. And Pi views the world through the lens of absolute precision.
Yeah.
To Pi, the universe is written in the language of mathematics.
Yeah.
And the kitchen is just a laboratory where the laws of physics are being, flagrantly ignored.
So the setup is they're trying to bake a simple apple pie together. And what ensues is, frankly, a hilarious disaster. But what I want to do today is something a little different. I don't want to just summarize this.
Right.
I want us to actually read through the story, scene by scene. I want to look at the specific language the author uses because they've packed so much genuine scientific and mathematical theory into this dialogue.
That is the plan. We're going to treat this narrative text with the same rigor we would a white paper. Because when you peel back the jokes, pun intended, there are some really heavy concepts here.
There really are.
We're going to talk about granular physics. We're going to talk about Riemann sums and calculus. We're going to talk about control theory and thermodynamics.
All disguised as a story about dessert. I just love it. So let's jump right in. The story begins with the recipe itself.
The catalyst for the conflict, the inciting incident.
Exactly. So I'm looking at the opening paragraph here. Let me just read this out. Dave smoothed out the wrinkled page of the cookbook, leaving a smudge of flour on the glossy photo. Okay, he said, clapping his hands together. It says here, easy, old-fashioned apple pie. 3 steps. Make crust, fill with apples, bake.
Okay, stop right there. Easy, old-fashioned apple pie.
Yeah.
To Dave, and probably to most of us listening, that word easy means low effort.
Right. Quick.
It means it won't take much time, it doesn't require specialized skills, and the cognitive load is low.
Exactly. But Pi is standing on the other side of the kitchen island. And Pi immediately takes issue with this. Listen to Pi's response. Define easy, Dave. Do they mean computationally simple? Or do they mean the entropy of the kitchen will remain constant?
This is such a brilliant introduction to the character of Pi because it just highlights this fundamental disconnect in language.
Totally.
To a mathematician or a physicist, simple or easy has a very, very specific meaning. A simple system is one that is linear. It's predictable.
What does that mean, linear?
It means if you know the starting conditions, you can calculate the ending conditions with like 100% accuracy.
Right.
A pendulum swinging in a vacuum is a simple system.
But a kitchen is not a vacuum.
Far from it. A kitchen is a high entropy environment. Entropy in thermodynamics is a measure of disorder.
The messiness of a system.
Exactly. The second law of thermodynamics states that in an isolated system, entropy always increases. Things break. Eggs scramble. Flour disperses. To Pi, the kitchen represents a complex system full of these nonlinear variables.
So when the recipe says easy,
Pi here is predictable. But Pi knows that baking is inherently chaotic.
so Pi is already on edge because the whole premise of the recipe, that this will be easy, is, in Pi's eyes, scientifically false.
Precisely. It's a false promise of order in a world of chaos.
And the text gives us this great visual cue to Pi's state of mind. It says, Pi was wearing a frantic expression and holding a laser caliper.
A laser caliper. I laughed out loud when I read that. I really did.
For those of us who aren't engineers, what exactly is a laser caliper?
It is a precision measuring tool. I mean, extreme precision. Standard calipers use these little jaws to measure the outside or inside dimensions of an object.
Right, I've seen those.
A laser caliper uses a beam of light to measure distance with incredible accuracy, to talk in micrometers.
Mm-hmm.
You use this in aerospace engineering. You use it to make sure a piston fits into an engine block so the car doesn't, explode.
So not for kitchenware.
You do not use it to measure a pie tin.
But that is exactly what Pi does. The recipe calls for a 9-inch tan. Pi aims the red dot at the aluminum rim and starts reading off the data. I'm getting 8.9924 inches at this vector and 8.9931 at this vector.
And just look at those numbers.
So close.
8.9924 versus 8.9931. The difference there is 10 thousandths of an inch. That's less than the width of a human hair. It's nothing.
To Dave, that is a 9-inch pan. To Pi, it's a total disaster. Pi yells, "It's not a perfect circle, Dave. It's an oblate spheroid. We're baking a lie."
We're baking a lie. That is the crux of it, isn't it? Let's just unpack the geometry here. What is a circle? Mathematically, a circle is the set of all points in a plane that are equidistant from a central point.
All the same distance from the middle.
Exactly. If the radius varies even by a micron, it is technically not a circle. It's an ellipse or, some irregular shape.
And Pi calls it an oblate spheroid.
Which is just Pi being dramatic, really.
Yeah.
An oblate spheroid is a 3D object. It's a sphere that is squashed at the poles and bulges at the equator. The Earth is an oblate spheroid.
So not a Pi pan.
No, a Pi pan is really just a truncated cone. But the point is, Pi is seeing the variance. Pi is seeing the manufacturing tolerance. In the real world, nothing is a perfect circle. But in Pi's head, in the world of theory, circles are perfect.
Ah, so it's theory versus reality.
The conflict here is between the Platonist view, where these perfect forms exist, and the materialist view, where everything is just...
Well, close enough.
Close enough, exactly.
And Dave is firmly in the materialist camp. He says, it's close enough, and tries to move the process along. This leads us to the crust, and this is where the physics really starts to get interesting.
The granular physics incident?
Yeah.
This is great.
Yes. So Dave dumps a bag of flour onto the counter to start making the dough. The text describes it like this. The white powder puffed into the air and settled in a jagged, uneven mound. Pi stares at it and whispers.
What?
Chaos. Pure granular chaos.
That is a beautiful line, and it's so scientifically accurate.
How so? It's just flour.
Just flour is actually one of the most complex states of matter to model. We call this granular matter.
Granular matter.
Yeah. Think about it. Is a pile of flour a solid?
Well, yeah, I guess. You can touch it. If you stepped on a big bag of it, you wouldn't sink.
Right. It can support weight. It has structural integrity. So it acts like a solid.
Yeah.
But if you tip the bag over, what happens?
It pours out. Like a liquid?
Like a liquid. It flows. But then, if you blow on it...
It flies into the air like dust.
Like a gas.
Whoa!
Exactly. Granular matter exhibits properties of solids, liquids, and gases depending on the energy you apply to it. Predicting how a pile of flour will settle is incredibly difficult. It involves statistical mechanics.
Really?
Oh yeah. You have things like force chains, where the weight is distributed through specific grains while others carry no load. You have jamming transitions, where the flow suddenly stops and it becomes rigid. It's a whole field of physics.
So when Pi looks at that pile, they aren't just seeing ingredients for a crust.
No.
They're seeing a system that defies easy mathematical prediction.
They are seeing a probabilistic nightmare. Pi knows that to model the position of every single grain of flour in that pile would require more computing power than exists on Earth. It is, by definition, chaos.
Dave, thankfully, does not care about force chains.
No, Dave wants Pi.
He hands Pi a rolling pin. He says, roll this out. We need a 12-inch circle.
And this is where the tool clashes with the objective. This is a classic design problem.
Pi looks at the rolling pin as if it were a holy relic, but then realizes the problem. Pi says, a circle, the most perfect shape in the universe, equidistant points from a central locus, and then looks at the rolling pin and says, I can't just roll it, Dave. I need a fulcrum. I need a compass.
And Pi is absolutely right here from a geometric standpoint.
Oh.
Think about the geometry of a rolling pin. It's a cylinder. When you apply it to dough, you are creating a plane.
Yeah.
You are flattening. But a rolling pin has no inherent mechanism to create a circle.
Right. It just makes things flat.
To make a circle with a rolling pin, you have to roll, then rotate the dough, roll, rotate the dough. You have to use your eyes and your judgment to approximate a circle.
You have to act as the feedback loop. You're the one making the correction.
Exactly. You are the control system. But Pi wants the tool to ensure the geometry. Pi wants a compass, a fixed point in the center, and a rotating arm that scrapes the dough at exactly 6 inches.
That would be a perfect circle.
It would guarantee a circle. A rolling pin guarantees nothing but flatness.
But Dave yells, just flatten it. So pie starts rolling, but listen to this description. Pie stopped every 3 seconds to measure the radius from the center to the edge. Too thick on the third quadrant, Pie yelled. I need to apply more pressure at 270 degrees.
I love that Pi has mentally projected a Cartesian coordinate system onto the lump of dough.
Totally. X and Y axis, 0 to 360 degrees. It's amazing.
That's incredible.
But then something happens that actually forces Pie to stop rolling entirely. Pie yells, Dave, the dough is exhibiting elasticity consistent with non-Newtonian fluids. My calculations are drifting.
Oh, this is the good stuff. This is material science right here in the kitchen.
Okay, we have to break this down. What is a non-Newtonian fluid? And is dough actually one of them?
Yes, it absolutely is. So let's start with a Newtonian fluid. Water is the classic example.
Okay.
If you have a bowl of water, you stir it slowly. It has a certain thickness or viscosity. If you stir it incredibly fast, or if you punch it, the viscosity stays the same. The resistance doesn't change based on how hard you hit it.
That makes sense. Water is water.
A non-Newtonian fluid changes its viscosity depending on the stress you apply to it. The most famous example is oobleck cornstarch in water.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
If you move your hand through it slowly, it feels like milk. If you punch it, it instantly turns into a solid rock. That is called shear thickening.
I've seen videos of people running across pools of that stuff.
Exactly. Now, dough is a bit different. Dough is what we call viscoelastic.
Viscoelastic.
It has both viscous properties, it flows, and elastic properties, it snaps back. And this is because of gluten.
The gluten network.
Right. Gluten is made of these long protein chains. When Pi rolls the dough, those chains are being stretched out. They're under tension. But because they are elastic, they have memory. They want to coil back up.
So when Pie rolls it out to 12 inches...
The moment the rolling pin leaves the dough, the gluten pulls back and the circle shrinks to like 11.5 inches.
Ah.
This is what Pi means by my calculations are drifting. The variable, the radius, is time dependent. It's not a static number.
It's fighting back.
It is. In rheology, which is the study of flow, we talk about relaxation time. If you hold the dough stretched out for a long time, the proteins will eventually relax and stay there. But in the short term, it acts like a rubber band.
So for a mathematician trying to calculate the precise surface area...
It's maddening. You can't solve for x if x keeps changing on its own.
Dave's response to this materials science crisis is, of course, classic Dave. He yells, it's flour and water. It's not rocket fuel. Just make it flat-ish.
And that word triggers the meltdown.
Flat-ish. Pi screams. There is no ish in geometry. It is either a plane or it is not. This is a topographical map of a disaster.
Topographical map is such a great image. Because if the dough isn't perfectly flat, it has hills and valleys.
It has geography.
It has geography. And if you're thinking about heat transfer in the oven, a thin spot will burn and a thick spot will be raw. Pi is thinking about thermal conductivity. Dave is just thinking about eating pie.
It's the perfect clash. They eventually wrestle the viscoelastic nightmare into the pan. The story notes, it wasn't perfect, which meant Pi was physically vibrating with distress.
I could feel that anxiety.
But they have to move on. Section 3. The filling.
Or, as I like to call it, the calculus of fruit.
So Dave is peeling apples. He grabs a measuring cup and says, we need 6 cups, a standard recipe instruction.
And Pi immediately spots the flaw in the measurement system. It's a fundamental error.
Pi grabs the cup and says, a cup is a unit of volume. Apples are irregular solids. If we just throw them in, the interstitial space, the air gaps, Dave, will throw off the density of the filling.
This is a real problem. In mathematics, this is known as the packing problem.
The packing problem.
Yes. Imagine you have a box and you want to fill it with basketballs. You can only fit so many. There will always be empty space between the balls, right?
Right. Of course.
Mathematically, for perfect spheres, the maximum density you can achieve is about 74%. That means 26% of your volume is just air.
Wow, that's a lot of empty space. I wouldn't have thought it was that much.
It is. And that's for perfect spheres packed perfectly. For irregular chunks of apple thrown randomly into a cup, the air gaps could be 40% or even 50%.
So when the recipe says 6 cups of apples...
You might actually only be getting 3 cups of fruit and 3 cups of air. The measurement is wildly inaccurate.
So Pi is right. Using volume to measure solids is a bad idea.
It's terrible science. That's why professional bakers and all scientists use scales. Weight is absolute. Volume is relative to shape.
Pi goes to the extreme, though, as always. Pi suggests they puree the apples.
Because a liquid has 100% packing efficiency, no air gaps.
Yeah.
It's the perfect logical solution.
Dave refuses to make applesauce pie. So Pi pivots to a different mathematical solution. And this is where the story gets incredibly nerdy in the best possible way.
This is my favorite part.
Pi grabs a knife and says, then we must stack them. If we slice them infinitely thin, we can approximate a solid volume using Riemann sums.
Riemann sums. I mean, I haven't thought about Riemann sums since my first year of university calculus. This is amazing.
Break it down for us. What is Pi trying to do here with the apples?
Okay, so in calculus, one of the big questions is, how do you calculate the area under a curve? Or the volume of a weirdly shaped object? You can't use simple length times width because the edges are curvy.
Right.
So a mathematician named Georg Bernhard Riemann came up with this method. You slice the shape into a bunch of skinny rectangles. You can easily calculate the area of a rectangle.
Sure. Length times width.
Right. So you add up all the rectangles and you get an approximation of the area.
Okay, it's like building the shape out of Legos. It's going to be blocky, but it's close.
Exactly. But if the Legos are big, the shape is very blocky. It's not accurate. But, and here's the magic of calculus, if you make the rectangles thinner and thinner and thinner.
The approximation gets better and better.
Yes. And if you make them infinitely thin, approaching zero width, the error disappears completely. The sum of the rectangles becomes the integral, becomes the exact area.
So Pi wants to slice the apples so thin that they become essentially 2D planes, allowing him to stack them without any air gaps.
Pi wants to integrate the apples. He wants to turn discrete slices into a continuous solid. It is theoretically beautiful.
And physically impossible.
I'm completely insane in a kitchen.
Dave, unsurprisingly, is not impressed by the integral calculus. He blocks the cutting board and yells, "No calculus, just chunks. Big, dumb, irrational chunks."
And Pi gasps.
Don't use that word. Irrational.
Oh, I have to explain the double meaning here. This is so clever. To Dave, irrational just means without logic or stupid.
Yeah, that's how I use it.
But to Pi, an irrational number is a very specific mathematical concept.
Like the number pi itself, right?
Exactly like the number pi. An irrational number is a number that cannot be written as a simple fraction, like 1/2 or 3/4. Its decimal expansion goes on forever without repeating.
The square root of 2 is another one?
The square root of 2, yes. These numbers are messy, they are infinite, they refuse to be contained in a neat little box. So to call a chunk of apple irrational is basically a mathematical slur. It's an insult against order.
Dave wins the battle of the knife. They stick to chunks, but Pi insists on arranging them. And here we get another famous mathematical concept.
Oh, yeah?
Pi arranges the apples in a perfect Fibonacci spiral, expanding outward in a golden ratio.
Golden ratio. Phi, 1.618. We see this everywhere in nature. It's incredible.
Sunflowers, right. That's the classic example.
Sunflowers, pine cones, nautilus shells, the arrangement of leaves on a stem. It's a pattern called phyllotaxis.
Why does nature use the spiral so often? What's the point?
It's about efficiency again. It always comes back to efficiency. If a plant wants to pack as many seeds as possible into a flower head, using the golden angle, which is about 137.5 degrees, ensures that the seeds pack together as tightly as possible without leaving any gaps.
So wait a minute. If Pi is using a Fibonacci spiral to arrange the apples?
Pi is trying to solve the packing problem again.
Oh.
By mimicking a sunflower, Pi is trying to minimize those air gaps he hates so much. It's actually a brilliant application of biomimicry.
Wow. Pi justifies it by saying the ratio of sweetness to tartness will be distributed along a logarithmic curve.
Which is, well, that's just beautiful nonsense. Flavor chemistry doesn't really work on logarithmic curves like that. But visually, structurally, it's a sound idea.
Dave, ever the realist, just brings the hammer down. He looks at this beautiful spiral and says, it's going to turn into mush.
And he's right. He is 100% right. The second that Pi hits the heat, the cell walls of the apple break down. The pectin dissolves. The water turns to steam. The structure collapses.
All that beautiful geometry.
Thermodynamics destroys geometry every single time.
Dave then dumps sugar on top of the masterpiece, and Pi shrieks, "You ruined the symmetry!" And Dave says, "I added the flavor." That is the core conflict right there, isn't it?
It's the visual ideal versus the chemical reality. Symmetry versus flavor.
This brings us to section 4, the top crust and the oven. The final boss battle.
A ventilation problem.
The recipe says to cut vents in the top crust to let steam escape. Dave grabs a knife to cut some simple slits, but Pi stops him. Pi suggests a fractal pattern, specifically the Sierpinski carpet.
The Sierpinski carpet. Okay, this is getting advanced. This is like deep cut math.
Explain this one. I've heard the name, but I can't picture it.
So the Sierpinski carpet is a fractal. You start with a square, you divide it into a 3x3 grid, so 9 smaller squares like a tic-tac-toe board.
Okay.
You remove the middle one, so now you have 8 squares left with a hole in the middle. Then you do the same thing to each of those 8 squares. Remove the middle of each one. And you just keep doing this infinitely.
What happens to the shape? It seems like you'd end up with nothing.
Well, the area of the carpet approaches 0 because you keep taking pieces away. Eventually, there's almost no dough left. But, and this is the mind-bending part, the perimeter of all those little holes approaches infinity.
Wait, how can you have an infinite perimeter in a finite space?
That's the magic of fractals. It's related to the coastline paradox. The more closely you measure the coastline of Britain, the longer it gets because you're measuring smaller and smaller wiggles.
Yeah.
In a fractal, you can have infinite boundary lines within a finite space.
So if pi is looking for optimal airflow,
He wants to maximize the surface area for the steam to escape. A fractal with an infinite perimeter would theoretically be the most efficient vent in the universe.
well, practically.
Practically, you can't cut infinite holes in dough. The gluten would tear, the dough would dry out, it would be a complete disaster. But theoretically, it's genius.
Dave overrides him. Just cut a few slits, he begs. They move to the oven. The recipe calls for 375 degrees.
An integer. Pi hates integers. They're too simple, too clean.
Why is it always integers? Pi asks. He sets the oven to 375.14159.
The first digits of pi.
Of course. And the visual here is fantastic. The story says Dave notices Pi has taped a magnifying glass and a protractor to the oven knob to adjust it by microdegrees.
This is where the engineer in me just feels so bad for Pi.
Yeah.
Because Pi is fighting a battle he cannot possibly win. It's futile.
Why? Can't we set an oven precisely?
Not a home oven, no. Think about how a thermostat works in an oven. It uses what we call a bang-bang controller.
A bang-bang controller.
Yeah, it's binary. It's either on or off. There's no in between.
Okay.
So you set it to 375. The heating element turns on bang. The oven heats up. When the sensor hits 375, it doesn't just hover there perfectly. It usually overshoots a bit, maybe to 380 or 390. Then the element turns off, bang.
And the temperature starts to drop.
Exactly. It might drop all the way down to 360 before the sensor kicks in and turns the element back on.
So the temperature is just constantly waving up and down around the target.
Constantly. It's a sine wave. The temperature of your oven is just an average over time. Trying to set it to 375.14159 is meaningless because the error margin, the noise in the system, is plus or minus 20 degrees.
It's like trying to do eye surgery while riding a roller coaster.
That's a perfect analogy.
But Pi won't give up. After the pie is in, Pi sits on the floor, nose pressed against the glass. Dave asks what's happening, and Pi says this: monitoring the expansion coefficient of the crust.
Wow.
If it expands too rapidly, the circumference will exceed the structural integrity of the gluten network. I have to be ready to calculate the failure point.
Again, this is valid physics. As the water in the dough turns to steam, it expands. The dough acts like a balloon. It creates what's called hoop stress.
Hoop stress.
It's the stress around the circumference of a cylinder or a sphere. If that stress exceeds the tensile strength of the gluten bonds, pop, you get a crack. That's what a cracked pie crust is. It's a structural failure.
So Pi sees a bridge collapsing. Dave just sees a pie baking. Dave says, or you could just smell it to see if it's done.
And Pi delivers the line that defines their entire worldview. Smell is subjective, Dave. Thermodynamics are absolute.
It's a total rejection of the sensory experience, isn't it? Pi doesn't trust his nose because you can't put smells cinnamony into a spreadsheet.
Which is so ironic because, as we are about to see, the sensory experience is the only thing that actually matters in the end.
That brings us to section 5, the finished product and the verdict. The timer beeps.
The moment of truth. The data comes in.
Dave pulls the pie out. Let's read the description. The pie was golden brown, bubbling with a thick syrupy juice. It smelled like caramelized sugar and warmth. Dave is proud. He says, we did it.
But Pi isn't looking at the golden brown. Pi is looking at the data. He's taking measurements.
Right. Pi says the crust shrank. The diameter has reduced by approximately 4%.
Which is real. Shrinkage is a real thing. As the water evaporates, the gluten network tightens up. It's basic material science.
And Pi points out a flaw. Look at that bubble on the left. It breaks the plane. It's asymmetrical.
The chaos of the oven wins. The bang-bang controller, the uneven heat, the little steam pockets, they all conspired to ruin the geometric perfection.
Dave defends it. It's a homemade pie. Pie, it's supposed to be messy. And then he cuts the first slice. Even the slicing gets critiqued.
Oh, this is a classic math pet peeve. I feel this one personally.
Dave hands the slice to Pi. Pi looks at it and says, "You cut this slice at approximately 58 degrees."
Okay, simple geometry here.
Huh.
A circle is 360 degrees. If you want to cut a pie into 6 even pieces, each angle must be exactly 60 degrees. 360 divided by 6.
58 degrees is pretty close, though.
It's close, but it's an error, and it's a compounding error. If the first slice is 58, the next one has to be 62 to compensate, or you end up with a weird tiny sliver at the end. The symmetry is broken. To Pi, this is physically painful. It's a lack of precision.
Dave gives a nice speech here. He says, "Without you, this would just be a circle. With you, it's a headache, but it's our headache."
Oh, the human element finally breaks through.
But then, Pi takes a bite. And suddenly, the commentary stops. The physics stops. The calculations are gone.
The sensory data finally overrides the theoretical model.
Pi chews slowly, then says the flavor profile, it's
Yeah.
non-repeating, it's complex.
Not repeating. Pi is describing the flavor as if it were a number sequence, an irrational number. That's amazing.
And Dave, in a moment of sheer genius, offers a word. He asks, "Transcendental."
Oh, this is the best line in the entire story. We have to make sure everyone listening gets this joke because it is so, so good.
Please break it down. Why is transcendental so funny here?
Okay, so it works on 2 levels. Level 1, in normal English, transcendental means spiritual, supernatural, extraordinary. The pie tastes so good it transcends reality.
Right, the everyday meaning.
Level 2. In mathematics, a transcendental number is a specific, very special category of irrational number. It's a number that is not the root of any polynomial equation with rational coefficients. It's a very high-level concept.
Can you give me an example of a transcendental number?
The 2 most famous ones are E, Euler's number, and pi.
Pi. The number pi is transcendental.
Yes. The number pi is transcendental, so Dave is calling the pi transcendental, effectively naming it after the character pi, while also using this high-level mathematical term to describe the infinite complexity of the flavor.
That is incredibly clever. My mind is kind of blown.
It's the perfect pun. It connects everything.
And Pi gets it. The text says Pi smiles, a rare, genuine curve, and replies, "Yes, it's irrational how good this is."
Another double entendre. It's brilliant.
Irrational numbers again.
And the irrationality of the situation itself. Think about it. By all of Pi's metrics, this pie is a total failure.
It is.
The measurements were wrong. They used volume instead of weight. The shape is wrong. It's an oblate spheroid. The temperature was fluctuating wildly. The crust cracked. The slicing angle was off. The inputs were pure chaos.
But the output.
The output is perfection. The goodness of the pie cannot be derived logically from the messy process. It is irrational. It defies the algorithm.
You know, it reminds me of the concept of emergence.
Exactly. Yes. You put simple things together. Flour, apples, heat. And something emerges from their interaction that has properties the individual parts don't have. You can't find the taste of apple pie in a single molecule of cinnamon.
It just appears from the combination.
It emerges from the system. It's magic or physics, depending on how you look at it.
The story ends with a final bit of banter. Dave says, "Great, now let's eat the rest of it before you try to calculate the calories." And Pi says,
Let me guess.
"Too late. I'm already at 4,000 digits."
Because, of course. Of course he is. Pi finds comfort in the numbers. If he can't control the geometry, at least he can quantify the energy content.
It's a perfect ending. So, zooming out a bit, we've had a lot of fun with the laser calipers and the Riemann sums. But what is the big takeaway here? Why did this story resonate with us enough to do a whole deep dive on it?
I think it resonates because we are all living in a world that is becoming increasingly like Pi. We are obsessed with quantification.
That's so true. We track everything.
We have smartwatches measuring our sleep stages to the minute. We count our macros. We A/B test our lives. We optimize our morning routines. We use algorithms to find dates. We treat our lives like engineering problems that need to be solved.
We want the easy. That means predictable.
Yes.
Yeah.
We want to control the entropy. We want to bake a perfect circle.
Right.
But this story is a gentle reminder that the world, the actual lived experience of the world, is a Dave world. It's granular. It's non-Newtonian. It pushes back. The oven temperature fluctuates. Relationships fluctuate. Careers fluctuate.
And if you spend your whole life trying to force the fractal ventilation and the perfect 60-degree slice,
You spend your life physically vibrating with distress.
Yeah.
You miss the point. You miss the experience. You miss the flavor.
because the flavor comes from the mess, from the imperfections.
Exactly. The whoosh that Dave predicted. That's where the sugar and the apples meld and create something new. The bubble that broke the plane. That's the crispy part everyone fights over. The beauty is in the error term.
So you need a little bit of pie to get the crust made in the first place. You need a recipe.
You need structure.
Mhm.
You absolutely need constraints. You can't just throw apples on the floor and call it a pie. You need geometry. But you need a lot of Dave to actually enjoy the result.
I love that. You need the tension between the two. You need both.
You do. You need both to have a good life and the good pie.
Well, to our listeners, here is a question for you to chew on, so to speak. In your own life, whether it's at work, in your hobbies, or in your actual kitchen, where are you falling on the spectrum? Are you a Dave, happy with close enough because it gets the job done? Or are you a pie, stressing over the vector of the pie tin?
And maybe more importantly, does knowing the geometry make the pie taste better, or does it just make the baking harder? Does all that analysis add to the joy, or does it get in the way?
That is the question. A transcendental question for a transcendental dessert. Thanks for diving deep with us today into the world of pastry physics.
Always a pleasure to calculate with you.
We'll see you on the next deep dive. Stay curious.
Oh, hit the like button and subscribe. And hit that damn bell.